Good morning, everybody. This is going to be like the live updates I do. I burnt a hole in one of my new shirts smoking the other day. This is a different one. I'm going to teach in a little while, which will be like the Sunday sermons, but that won't go up until like a week because I write the notes and I have another one or two that's going to come up before that. And there's always something maybe you could comment on, and I think, I might comment on my teaching thing, but then these little things just are updates. I was thinking, what can I make a title? These are thoughts I had. I got up very early today. Look, I have to pray and quote scripture, maybe like for this morning, for a very long time, multiple hours, okay, and I do that real loud. And it connects me. They did a study, I think I'll just mention this, but people that have had traumatic brain injury, if you put the music on, this is not new, but a lot of people are not aware of it, and if you have somebody that has that some friends are dealing with these things, put the music on. I don't know if they watch my videos, but put the music that the person liked on headphones, however you can get that music to that person. And there'll be some change. And even if it's secular, as long as it's not really bad music, that would be a benefit. I thought, I could title this, I'm a Stable Genius. I read the comments, and that's how I also know who to pray for and all on Facebook. And both sides of the aisle, I laugh sometimes. One of my friends from the street, he put a comment up, and it had nothing to do with politics. And it was kind of like funny, though it was not anything Christian. And then I saw like some of the guys were like, okay, yeah. And one of the girls who I know said, OMG, And I see the lives of people today, and when we talk about, this is a little about media, why make a comment, you might title it, I'm a Stable Genius. Because at this time, Mr. Trump is now under fire because of the new book that came out called Fire and Fury by Steve Bannon, former guy with Trump, and authored by Wolf, a man by the name of Wolf. And I do understand that. I just want to show you, those of you who hate Trump, I don't think you will ever stop hating Trump. Those who sincerely dislike Trump, I don't think you'll stop that. The same thing with Mr. Obama or whoever, Hillary. Today, and even last night and the last 2 days, I just want you to see a little of media narrative and when we say fake news. There are many books written by former political people that used to work with a particular person, whether it's a president or whether it was, there are very negative books you can find on Mr. Obama, negative books, and some have truth in them about the things that they accused. None of them, to my memory, ever made it to the top world news night after night after night. As I speak, I believe the author of that book is now on what used to be a reputable news show, which is Meet the Press. For many years you had Tim Russert, who passed away young, and now you have the other guy, I forget, Chuck Todd. Now, what media bias means is this. They've never done that with another critical book of any other former president, particularly anyone that would be a Democrat. And there have been books written that have some legitimacy, but it was never a top world news story. And to have that same author of the book Sunday morning, and then they say, no, but this is how, and the media will say, but this is how we critique it. We ask these questions about the accusations, but they never did that with the others. So they have a one-track mind. The sad thing about it is, and I'm concerned, I agree with the Color Times in that I advocate for the DACA kids. But DACA, as well as, I'm not a pot smoker, I'm not a marijuana smoker. I have Christian friends who do smoke pot. And I'm not saying it, I've often, this is what I've told them. I said, if that's all you do, I understand the whole debate on the gateway drug and everything. I said, if that's all you do, I'm not telling them break the law, and of course it is against federal law. I'm going to discuss that in a second. But what William Sessions just did is he rescinded the policy that President Obama put in place. Some of the policies that President Obama put in place, including like DACA, these were kind of like bypassing actual law, all right? And so then you had various states in the United States that legalized marijuana. But the problem was it's against federal law, and in any other types of laws, states cannot, this is some argue states' rights issue, but you'd have to change that by the Constitution. So William Sessions, and I'm not a big fan of William Sessions, okay, the Attorney General, but he rescinded a policy. And when the DACA thing, DACA was the same thing. It was President Obama's noble attempt to allow the young children who came into this country, granted illegally, to stay. And I want them to stay, the ones that have been raised here and brought up here. But the DACA thing, again, like the pot thing, that was a very temporary, unstable thing, because it wasn't, they didn't pass it through Congress like they could have. If Obama didn't spend so much time in his first year as president, the first year that he was in his first office, on the health care, he could have maybe focused more. And there was a lot of pro-immigrant people who are mad at the president for doing that. Now, here's the problem you're going to have. I believe it is real possible that President Trump and the Republican Congress, along with the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, whoever, they could legalize it and make it a law that the kids under DACA, which was a temporary thing, like the pot laws, if it was not federal law, make it law. They're not going to do that because the honest thing is there are many Democrats who would prefer not to really have that done under Mr. Trump. This is where the hatred, even to the neglect of your own constituency, because I see that. And the wall, I'm not, quote, for the wall, but the wall as a concept has now become, along the Texas, where I live, Mexico border, it's now become this thing. Like Schumer and others, we are fighting for, he cried on TV that time, but about the immigrant situation, though he did not cry when some things like that happened under Mr. Obama, meaning the tightening up of immigration from certain countries that are majority Muslim countries. Obama actually did tighten up rules and made it where some families did not come in. But Mr. Schumer never cried over that, Democrat from New York, but yet he cried on national TV. All right. The wall thing for the immigrants, you could make a deal. And if the wall, it wouldn't be, I'm not for it, okay? There's sections of our border that already have, quote, fence wall, all right? And then if you build some more, and you did that to let the kids that you claim, Democrats, that you advocate for, if you saw it as your own child, and said, oh, so what? I'll make the agreement on the wall. We already have Border Patrol that are trying to prevent people to come in according to our laws. So do the wall, whatever parts he wants. Oh, John, it'd be a waste of money. You would do it for the sake of the kids if you were really concerned, but many of them, it's a political thing. Now, I was just looking real quick, but I don't need to even find it. I read the Caller Times yesterday. And even a piece, all of the opinion section, one, I think his name is Ron Klain, and I remember the name. And it was a big advocacy piece for the viewpoint of why Mrs. Clinton should not now be investigated. And then at the end I read, oh, he was a former Clinton person. Okay. What you see, though, and every piece was that way, the media, they might say, we are giving opinions or we're giving. I just gave you that example. That you have top world news now about a book that was written by a possibly disgruntled former person that was with Trump and he kind of got out. But they don't do that. That's where we say fake news. Because then you will have piece after piece after piece that gives the defense of a particular side and doesn't do it on the other side, for the most part. That's what we call fake news. The pot laws. You would have had to, it was untenable, just as the country, to continue to allow states to pass their own laws legalizing pot when it was actually against federal law. And so again, Obama just kind of made a little rule, like the DACA thing, that if you were honest, you would say, let's get something in real federal law. If you want to legalize it, then you'd have to pass that. And so some that were on shaky ground on any of these things, legally, if you really cared and looked at those kids as your own kids, which many on the liberal side of the aisle claim, and I'm for those DACA kids to stay, but DACA, even by definition, the deferred action on whatever, it was not. It was unstable. You could have something on that. The Democrats are not going to want that. And even if it wasn't the wall, because that'll be the thing Mr. Trump will say, I want funding for that wall. I don't want the wall myself. But if you say in all the things against the wall, just do it for the sake of the kids. Just do it for their sake. But people that claim to be for the advocacy of whoever, whatever group, they're not rejoicing if their particular constituency benefits under Mr. Trump. And if I could say I'm a stable genius, that's what's in my mind. Because that was a tweet, or that was something Trump actually answered back. Because what some people sincerely believe, and the book I didn't read the book, but the book portrays Mr. Trump, Fire and Fury by Steve Bannon, and the guy that did it was Wolf, the publisher, I guess. It portrays Trump as, it says he's like a child, he doesn't read, he's not informed, and he repeats himself. Some in the media sincerely believe, and some in the country sincerely believe, because this is a narrative that some armchair psychiatrists on the media have said, he's to the point where he's mentally unstable, to the point where they should invoke a clause where they just remove him. That should be real high criteria in this country. And I think most people around Mr. Trump, whoever they are, would say, yeah, we don't agree with the way he does certain things, but he does not meet that level, meaning he's totally insane. Some people thought Mr. Reagan, at the end of his presidency, that became a political football between George Will and Bill O'Reilly on Fox and things like that. Some said, yeah, as some of these presidents got older, that they were actually kind of losing their mind at certain stages. But I think sincerely, anybody that's around working with somebody, I don't think they sincerely believe that it's to that level. But the book and some in the media believe it is. And if you looked at Trump, I remember when I flew into New Jersey a few years ago, and I got one of the cabs from Newark Airport, Liberty Airport, and it was before the presidency, Trump got in. But it was possibly an Indian man. It was a private cab guy I just grabbed out front. How much to give me a ride to North Bergen? But he kind of he liked Trump. And he was a business guy. And even my friend, some of my liberal friends during that time, I was surprised, they liked Trump. And I was not, a big pro-Trump person. And then I saw the wave change. And you say, but is it the media's fault? I just explained every piece in the Color Times was even from strong advocates of Mrs. Clinton. They never covered anti-Clinton books, which there were many, or some anti-Obama books. Never even a mention. But the last 2 days, and even the Sunday morning news shows, they're going now, that's the top story. Again, it was top story on the news last night. It should never be any former person, if you want to go look at the various investigations that are going on, all those types of things, that's legitimate. During the but that should never, that's why it's fake news. And it won't stop. I remember during the campaign, one news reporter, and this made it again to World News, interviewed somebody at some golf course overseas that Trump was involved in. And they said, but remember, they can ask 100 people a question. And then they asked this man, and they had his statement on World News, which was, if the nut Trump makes it, he will blow the whole world up with the nuclear bomb and so forth. Okay, some feel that way, I understand. But they had that as top news. And I would think, what would Trump say? He said, when I ran, like a lot of other people, he's even made these statements. He said, the media used to be nice to me. And he did an off-the-cuff interview with the New York Times the other day, by the way. And then all of a sudden, why do you hate him as much as you do? There are reasons why. And you might say, but look, we have legitimate reasons. Remember, what the media has been giving, and some of it might be true, some might not be true, but they have been giving world news primetime coverage to negative statements, critics, and so forth, and they've been doing that nonstop for a year. That does play into your, because I have had liberal friends, I just explained that, it kind of surprised me, who liked Trump. And then they said, but after all that's come out, remember, what you harp on night after night is going to affect you. And if you watched night after night, really, the few little things I mentioned about Mr. Obama that did not get coverage, and these were areas where the line was crossed. There were, if you looked at any particular president in modern history of the United States that went after the media more than any other one, it would have been Mr. Obama, and that's just the facts. Because he found people that were in the media that received leaks on things about him, and they went after those people and charging those leakers for the first time as under treason charges, under severe charges. There were multiple, and Mr. Obama did it more than all other former U.S. presidents combined, meaning brought charges like spy charges, treason charges against people in the media. I remember a New York Times person, I think he was New York Times, and they were interviewing and saying how Mr. Obama, is helping the media because he made a statement against in other countries at the time, like Iran is doing right now, cracking down on the media. And the statement from that somewhat liberal news guy, I think he was with New York Times, he said, "Are you kidding me?" He said how Mr. Obama went after leakers and reporters like no other president. So he was being honest. But the media didn't want to report that. They figured it was just a bias. So I would just ask people, as you watch today, that's top news. That is top, and I didn't put the news on, but that is top news. Top news from statements from maybe a disgruntled former person, top world news. And you say, yes, but we're investigating it. That's why we have, no, you're not. What you're doing is you're giving a platform to, but the honest truth about the condition of Trump, I would say, is he's very unorthodox. But to give an opinion of him from what the book seems to be saying, from what I've heard, that he's absolutely gone crazy. And then if you just look at some of the other things, it seems like in his own non-conventional way, he's doing the job that he feels he should do. So I'll do that one just as the update. I'm going to teach in a few minutes. Like I said, I'll be this Sunday. I want to just pray for you guys. When I comment on these issues, like I said, the media, whether it's the Kohler Times or whoever, they will say oftentimes we advocate. If the Kohler Times they do a lot of newsprint in defense of DACA. If you spent DACA with something I just explained, which was temporary, which the only way that would last, like the marijuana law then, the only way that would be stable for these kids is if it became law. And you have a chance to make these things law. The Kohler Times just simply, they do page after page after page, a lot of print on pro-immigrant, and I'm pro-immigrant. But the political thing is, you look sincerely at it. If you cared, if you really looked at those kids as your own kids, which you claim to do, and if your own kid was in this country, and you knew that they were under threat of maybe having to go back to another country, and I said, no, look, your kid can stay here, but we're going to build a wall that a lot of people don't like. And we already have a law that has Border Patrol patrolling it. Would you, for your own kid, would you say, son, let them build that stupid wall? But many liberals, even the Kohler Times, they would prefer to have, in that instance I'm giving you, as much as they think they're so noble and I get just, they believe that. Whether you're a liberal or conservative, if you view it as your own kid, which you don't. And I'm not defending the right or the left. It's a joke what they're doing. Many years ago, and I'll end it, I'll remember this. I remember this. There was a young black, I think he was a football player, and he was maybe 18. And then he had a girlfriend who was like 16. But this was high school. And somehow it came out that, yes, they were sexually active. And then it made it into the cycle, the news media. They began portraying this kid as like a sexual predator because he had sex with a girl that was underage. But any fair reading of it was, though I don't condone out of marriage sex, but any fair reading would have been that was a mistake, but not that you would have showed that kid as some predator, and it made it into the news. And they showed it. But I remember he was adopted by sort of looked like a conservative elderly white family. And they adopted him as a young boy, and he was their son. But the media had a thing that showed him, look at this large young black kid. And they began branding that. And then these old white people said, please, I forgot the outcome of the case. And Jesse Jackson, they asked him to please come and stand up with us and all, and he did. Jesse Jackson did. And as I watched it at that time, it was these two old white people just trying to help their son. And Mr. Jackson said, yeah, I'll speak out on your behalf. And so what you had was all the racial lines and everything else, political lines broken down because they loved their kid. And I would just say, if we spend a little more time in the media, all these newspapers, you're a great polluter of our city, by the way. I'll just tell you that. We live in a day, and there's a lot of issues in our local community about trash and all. The majority of trash production in the city comes from the Kohler Times. And also that penny saver thing that gets thrown in front of my house every day. Sometimes I throw it in the street, but then oftentimes I got to pick it up. So paper print is a great polluter in the city. But if you wanted to advocate, you saw those kids as yours, you should start asking the question. You should start putting political pressure on the Democratic side of the aisle and say, we might be able to have this law passed, not a DACA temporary thing, but a real law. But many in the Democratic Party do not want that to happen under Trump. And they might use it as an excuse. We can't have the wall. So you're not viewing those kids as your own kids. So they're all hypocrites, this media. And that'll be the top story for the next few days. You could have done something on Iran. It's somewhat of a crisis with the protests. You could have done something. No. You get your view. Okay? All right. I'm a stable genius.